The wind howled like a living beast across the wide and empty plains, tearing at the frail figure of a woman stumbling through the snow, her shawl ripped by icy gusts, her hair whipping across her pale face as she tried to press forward against a storm that seemed intent on swallowing her whole. And though her breath came in ragged bursts that stung her lungs with each inhale of frozen air, she did not stop because behind her was nothing but betrayal. Her own kin, those she had trusted all her life, had turned her out from the only home she had ever known, forcing her into the merciless winter night, with no thought for her survival. Their cruel words ringing louder than the roar of the blizzard, words that cut deeper than any knife, words that told her she was not wanted, that she was a burden, that she had no place among them anymore. And so she wandered half blind, half frozen, her shoes sinking into the drifts that numbed her feet, her hands trembling, her body weakening with every step until, at last, her legs buckled and she collapsed to the ground, the snow wrapping around her like a shroud, her tears freezing before they could even fall. And in that moment when her strength gave out and she thought perhaps she would welcome the silence of sleep, a shadow on horseback broke through the swirling white haze, a lone cowboy tall in the saddle, his coat and hat dusted with ice, his eyes sharp and searching as though the storm itself had called him to this place. And when he saw her lying there, small and broken against the vastness of the land, he spurred his horse forward without hesitation, leaping down and pulling her up into his arms, his voice rough yet gentle as he told her she was safe now, that he would not let the cold claim her. She wanted to answer, to ask him why he cared, but her lips were too numb to move, and so she let her head fall against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart as he carried her across the whitened plain, shielding her from the wind with his own body until at last, after what felt like an eternity of endless snow, the faint glow of a cabin window appeared in the distance, a flicker of warmth against the endless storm. And with renewed strength he pressed on until they reached the door, kicking it open with his boot, the firelight spilling across the room as he laid her gently on a bed near the hearth, covering her with blankets, his hands working quickly yet carefully to warm her fingers and toes, his brow furrowed with concern as he whispered reassurances she could barely hear. And when finally, the heat of the fire began to seep into her frozen limbs and color returned faintly to her cheeks, she opened her eyes and met his gaze, eyes as steady as the land itself, filled not with pity but with quiet strength, the kind of strength that asked for nothing in return but promised everything in protection. And in that instant, she felt a fragile hope stir within her, a belief that perhaps being cast away by those who should have loved her was not the end of her story but the beginning of something she had never known, something that could only be found in the arms of a man who chose kindness when he could have ridden on, who chose to risk the storm for a stranger. And as the night deepened and the storm raged outside, she lay wrapped in the warmth of both the fire and his presence, her heart whispering a promise to itself that she would no longer break beneath the cruelty of others, that she would rise again because fate had seen fit to send her a guardian when she needed it most. And though the road ahead would be uncertain, she knew it would no longer be walked alone, for beside her was a cowboy whose strength was matched only by his compassion, and in that union of survival and hope, the first sparks of a bond were lit that no storm, no betrayal, and no darkness could ever extinguish. And dear listeners, if this story touched your heart, if it carried you through the cold into the warmth of resilience and love, then I invite you to join us on this journey of tales untold, where every story holds the power to move souls and heal wounds. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories that will keep you inspired, because your support is the fire that keeps these stories alive, and together we will never let the flame go out. Morning broke with a pale light seeping through the cabin window, the storm finally easing after its long night of fury, and the woman stirred beneath the heavy quilts, her body still aching from the cold but her spirit wrapped in a strange, fragile calm, as if the walls of this small wooden shelter had granted her a moment of peace she hadn't known in years. She blinked awake to the crackle of the fire and the steady rhythm of boots moving across the wooden floor, and when her eyes found the cowboy, he was tending to a pot over the flames, steam rising as the scent of broth filled the room. He glanced back at her with that quiet steadiness again, tipping his hat slightly as though he had been waiting for this moment, and said softly that she should eat, that strength would return with warmth and food. She tried to sit up, her voice still faint as she whispered thanks, the word catching in her throat as tears threatened to rise. But he set the bowl in her hands with a nod, not pressing her to speak more than she could, simply standing nearby like a wall between her and the world's cruelty. For the first time, she realized how deeply the betrayal of her kin had scarred her, how easily despair might have claimed her if not for his intervention, and in the quiet of that cabin, she allowed herself to believe she was safe. The wind outside still moaned through the trees. But here, within these four walls, she discovered that storms could not touch her. Not while this man, this stranger who had chosen to risk everything for her, kept watch.